Good evening, everybody. Okay, I think people are just going to keep filtering through, but Kizzy, we've got a jam-packed schedule. Shall we get going?
Let's do it. So, hi everybody, my name is Kizzy Gardner and I am a trustee of Pregnant and Screwed. For those of you that are eagle-eyed, you will notice that I'm not in fact Jolie. Unfortunately, those of you who follow her on Instagram will know that she has pulled her back, and her message for everybody is look after your back, kids. It really hurts when you do that. So I'm Kizzy and I'm covering for her today. I'm very lucky to be a trustee of the incredible Pregnant and Screwed, the campaigning charity fighting for the motherhood penalty and women's rights. And it's so nice to have so many of you on the call with us this evening. There's nothing more heartwarming than having a group full of women talking about politics and shifting power, making things change, and getting off their backsides and actually doing something about it rather than just moaning. So thank you so much. It's a real honor to be joined by all of you this evening. We have a fantastic panel with us who I shall introduce in a little bit. And we're really looking at how we can align our political careers alongside being a parent. So we're going to hear from the panel about being a counsellor. We're going to ask them lots of questions. They're going to give us loads of tips, tell us the good stuff, the bad stuff, what works, what doesn't work. And we really want to hear from you in the chat some of the questions that you might have for the panel about what works and what support you think should be in place for parents in politics. So at the very start, I'm going to pass over to Nanda, who's going to talk to us a bit about 50-50 in the campaign, and then I will introduce our panel and we will kick off with the questions. So Nanda, over to you.
Excellent. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Alice. So good evening. It's really wonderful to see so many of you virtually joining us today. My name is Nanda Manley-Brown. I'm an NHS worker, a member of GMB Union. I'm a school governor and a local councillor in the London Borough of Lambeth, where I'm the Deputy Cabinet Member for Finance and Cost of Living. I'm also a mother, which I admit drives some of my priorities for a lot of the work that I do, along with a passion for the well-being of our future generations. And as a school governor, I try to support teachers and a new generation of children like my daughter to be the best that they can be. And I founded and chair a BAME staff network within the NHS, because only through engagement, diversity and inclusion can we help young people and communities to grow to be a safe and inclusive place to live and work. And I'm a diversity lead for 50-50 Parliament, because while I'll always love my dad and my brother, and I know that having a fairer gender balance in Parliament, the bond of trust that the suffragettes fought for between lawmakers and voters, still needs to be addressed. And so, in summary, I fall within that 7% of women who consider standing for election at any level. And 50-50 Parliament is a friendly network helping women to progress within politics by drawing on a diverse talent and just sharing experiences, friendly conversation and connections. And we know that many women don't see becoming a politician as an ultimate career goal. I certainly didn't 5 years ago, which is why we offer various different access and entry points to help build a more inclusive democracy. And we try and promote a safe environment where all women are shown respect, are supported, equipped, enabled and empowered. And as diversity lead, we work collaboratively to provide bespoke and tailored support for women from diverse backgrounds. And not just during Pride Month, but always we stand in solidarity with the LGBTQ community, and proactively we campaign for a fairer and diverse and inclusive democracy. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell, a little bit of an intro into 50-50 for those who don't already know. And I'm going to hand back to Kizzy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nanda. And we will hear much more from her later about being a counsellor and being a parent. So the first person we have on our panel is Rhiannon Evans. Rhiannon, are you there? Say hello if you are.
Yeah.
There we go. So Rhiannon is the Head of Communications and Public Affairs at Mumsnet, the UK's largest network for parents. And she leads Mumsnet Impact, the organisation's campaigning arm. She's worked in campaigns, politics and communications for more than a decade, including senior roles in the Labour Party and Citizens Advice Cymru. So we know that Mumsnet have done some really good research in mums in politics. And I know it inspired your recent campaign on virtual council meetings, which, you can tell us. why they're. Can you tell us a bit more about what you discovered in your research?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks very much, Kizzy, and thanks very much for inviting me to be on the panel this evening. I'm really excited to be here. So as you say, Mumsnet is the largest organisation for parents in the UK. We've got about 8 million monthly users, 90% of whom are women, and the overwhelming majority of whom are mums. And as well as conversations about the practicalities of parenting, there's a lot of political conversations on Mumsnet, so around things like maternity leave and childcare and women's health. And it's something that we saw a lot of, particularly during the pandemic, a growing recognition that, you know, lots of things just don't work for women and mums in this country. So off the back of that, earlier this year, we did some polling amongst our users to try and gauge their sort of interest in politics, but also their appetite to get involved and really change things. And I suppose I would say the results were not necessarily surprising, but they were pretty depressing. So we found from our users that nearly 90% of them said they were very interested in politics, and more than 90% said they vote in every election. So they're really engaged and they understand the importance of politics, and, you know, they have a really high level of knowledge about it. But only 7% of them said that they would be willing to stand for election at any level. So there's a really, really big gap between that interest and then actually feeling like they, you know, they could stand for election and get involved. I think in a bit of a tongue-in-cheek reflection of just how unappealing they found the idea of getting involved, we found that nearly half of our users said they would rather give birth again without pain relief than get involved in politics in any way. So, you know, it's pretty damning, I think. And we found some sort of disparities in terms of demographics as well. So we found that older mums and mums from households with higher incomes were much more likely to get involved than mums from different backgrounds. So obviously that in itself is worrying. And there were a range of reasons why mums didn't want to get involved, but the top ones were, I guess, as you would expect. So there was a lot of concern around misogyny in politics and that level of sort of public scrutiny and attention. And a lot of women said they just didn't feel like they'd fit in, you know, they didn't think their face would fit. And then there was also real concern about the kind of practicality. So the idea that, you know, politics just isn't compatible with family life and they couldn't get the right childcare. And, you know, frankly, they were just too busy to try and get involved. So I think, you know, it was a really clear demonstration that there is a problem here in terms of getting mums involved in politics. But obviously, you know, it's something that's incredibly important, because if we don't have those voices at the table, then all of these things that affect mums and women just don't get discussed. And as you say, Kizzy, that's why we got involved in the campaign on virtual council meetings in England. So we know that being able to attend council meetings remotely during the pandemic made a real difference, and it actually, you know, for the most part worked perfectly well. And it, you know, that idea that we should keep the good stuff that came out of the pandemic, I think, is a really powerful one. And we know it's working fine in Wales and Scotland, and there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't again have virtual council meetings in England. And not just because it makes a real difference in terms of getting mums involved and people with caring responsibilities, but also a range of people from underrepresented backgrounds. You know, it just makes life that little bit easier. And so yeah, as part of Mumsnet campaign, we've been working on this issue and really just trying to explore the barriers and the things that we can change that will help to get more mums involved.
Sorry, slight pause. So I figured out my muting. It's really interesting you say that. I've been involved, so I'm also a local councillor, and the virtual meeting thing is just so important. So I chair my local party branch, and we are still doing those virtually. And I have a 8-month-old at the moment, and I couldn't have done that if I, you know, wasn't able to virtually. I wouldn't be able to do what I've done. I literally wouldn't be elected right now. I think people just massively underestimate the importance of really basic accessibility needs that make a huge difference and opens up a whole world to people who otherwise would have to be at home looking after their children, which we know is often the women in this case. Thanks, Rhiannon, it's really interesting. So I'm going to hand over next to our next panelist, who is Alison Eden. Alison, are you there? Say hello if you are. Oh, we're almost unmuting. There you go.
Hi.
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 So Alison is a local district councillor in Tainbridge. Tainbridge, is that if I could pronounce it correctly?
Tainbridge in Devon.
In Devon, lovely. She works full-time in medical research and has a daughter in a local school. Yeah. In 2015, when her daughter was 10, she was elected as a local councillor. And when she spoke up about the local council's failure to promote diversity, the leader of the council, accused her of faux anger and refused to discuss the issue. Marvellous. Local politics is dominated by retired men, she says, adding that it needs a shake-up and a lot more women for all parties. In her 50s, she was invited to be a model for an LGBTQ fashion label at London Fashion Week. Moderately deaf, she is a determined campaigner for all who need her support. Alison, we need more women like you. So tell us a bit more about your journey to becoming a counsellor.
Well, I'm actually a terrible example of what I want to change, right? Because I just didn't have, it's like imposter syndrome, right? I didn't see myself as somebody that could take part even in local politics. And it was only when I moved to Devon and a neighbour who was a former MP asked me to stand for election that I did. Now, since becoming elected, I am on a mission. Every woman I speak to, it's like, you're worth it. You have a voice. The fact that you exist means that you should be part of our political structure and part of our decision making. And that's, so in a sense of my greatest advice to anybody thinking about taking part in local politics is just to talk, is to go to a meeting, watch it and picture yourself there. But the biggest lesson of all that I want to impart, having become a councillor at the age of 50, is I wish somebody could have grabbed me by the shoulder 30 years ago and said, stop holding yourself back. You know, the minute you go into politics, you realise there's an awful lot of idiots actually making some incredibly important decisions about your own life. In terms of pluses and minuses, what I would say to any woman of my age is that the biggest, you become a councillor and you bring down the average age by about 30 years. And you know, I am the establishment. And yet I feel like I'm the one that's shaking things up and I get ticked off for swearing. You know, so I'm on an absolute, you know, we need women from all parties to put themselves forward, but it is tough because you have to get elected. And the process of getting elected is you know, it's quite an experience, as other councillors on the panel will attest, I'm sure. And am I running out of time yet?
No, carry on, you're doing grand.
Okay, so in terms of, so the most important thing, unfortunately, is that you need time to campaign and you need to be known in your community. And if you're lucky, you might find a party that sort of broadly fits with what you actually believe. And if you can find a party that does that, then that's where the process starts. And the different parties have pretty much the same processes of picking people. But that's where the fun starts, as I suspect some of my panelists will say, because you know, politics, like everything, whether it's a church choir, whether it's a political party, whether it's a, I don't know what, you've got human being dynamics, you've got, oh, this is how we do this. It's like, I had people saying things to me like, oh, we don't do things like that in Devon. And I'm thinking, well, why? It's, you know, so sometimes being a fresh new voice is something that, you know, you have to kind of manage. It's like the politics of politics. But I beg the people who have come to this call, go and watch a council meeting. And if you've ever thought to yourself, oh no, I'm not worthy, just make yourself delete that thought immediately. Look at the fools who are taking decisions on your behalf and find some soulmates, because there will be soulmates for you. There will, I promise.
So would you say your top 3 tips to the steps that they need to take? So a woman watching this right now, wants to become council, what the top 3 things? Top
3 things is actually watch local politics in action, because the likelihood is you will be utterly horrified and any self-doubt you had will be instantly replaced with a desire to change things.
So true.
So top tip is actually go and have a look at what's happening. If you can bring yourself to join a party if you haven't already, and because there you will find the support and the structure. And I don't know whether we've got time to go into this, but there are such different levels of politics available to you. So, you know, at a local parish level, where the budget may only be 50k or something in a whole year, sometimes you don't even have to be elected. You just put yourself forward. For the district council, where I'm a district councillor, they have a budget of more like 100 million, and there's a, you know, full-blown elections and things to go through. So, you know, there are different ways, and I would say just start. If you're crossed about something, write a letter to the local paper. In my experience, papers are desperate to get material from people. And that's another thing. Don't think you're not worthy of having something to say in your local community. Because believe you me, these days, not just with print, but with media, journalists are desperate for news. So every time you think of something that's an opinion or something that's newsworthy, put yourself out there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alison. One of the things that you said that really resonated with me, and I think it's come up in the chat a little bit, is around imposter syndrome. And it's taken me a very long time to get there. But about 3 months ago, I realized that the difference between attributing something to luck and just saying I was lucky and, you know, it just landed involved, and that's me, is that I haven't been taking control of my life at all. I've just been wandering around going, oh, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. And I haven't at any point gone, well, maybe I've got a bit of say about that. Maybe actually I'm not that lucky. And actually I'm actually all right at what I do.
Yeah.
And it really shifted the possibility for me, because I suddenly thought, oh, there's all these things I could apply for, because actually maybe I'm capable, not just lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sad,
Yeah,
it's taken me 38 years to get to that point, but I think it often does with women in particular.
Me 50. This is why I'm just so irritating to people I know. I just want to seize them and say, for goodness sake, life is short. Get out there, say what you think. Because there are women that will protect you and hold you up, and there are people you can go and vent to. So you're not alone in politics. You don't have to be. You can find people to mentor you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Alison. Okay, so our next panelist is Naz Panju. Naz, are you there?
Oh, good. I'm unmuted.
Marvellous, we can hear you. So Naz is a Conservative parish councillor and BCIE Limited Director, which is a director of a UK education company who are a leading education consultancy. Naz is on the parliamentary candidate list for the Conservative Party and currently holds a number of other positions with the Conservative Party, including being a parish councillor for Croxley Green. So Naz, how complicated do you find it to manage being a parent alongside your political and professional career?
Oh, so firstly, thank you very much for having me on the panel. I'm honored to be here, and hopefully some of my experiences can help people in their journey. So how complicated was it? In a word, very, very complicated. And not just the political part, even our careers, you know, being able to maintain a career of any sort whilst you're having a child is a big conundrum for most of us. And of course, it's a very important part, because once our kids come along, our identity becomes our kids. But we forget, and I'm at the age now when I've got teenage girls and they're soon going to be gone. Lucky for me, I've maintained my career and my business, but I have a lot of friends who are completely lost because they've got no idea what to do when their kids are gone. If they had careers, it's difficult for them to go back into that career in some cases. It's sad to see. So my advice to people with very young kids is try and maintain some form of identity as you go along. I found it exceptionally difficult because when my first child was born, my business was into the 5th year. I'd set it up straight after university, but it was in the 5th year, so it was very, very early days. And I had to do it all. I came in as an immigrant to the country, so I had no mum help, no mother-in-law help. Really no help apart from just me and my husband at the time. So it was very difficult. I've done it all from, I think the way I dealt with it was I became very robotic in how I parented, which may be right or not, but I did what I had to do. Everybody's heard of, I've forgotten her name now. The book, the very regimental book that everybody's heard of.
I can't remember her name either, but I've read it.
I've blanked her from my head. But I think you all
remember the book. Put it in the chat if anyone remembers what.
Yeah, but you know, it was great because I had to have fixed sleeping times, fixed feeding times just to survive, because there wasn't any other way. And to be honest, it worked fine for me. I'm a very organized person in that sense, so it worked perfectly. I didn't listen to all the stuff about not kissing and cuddling. I took what bits needed to be done on that. But I did what I had to do. I've had the rock under my desk and rocked away whilst I've written emails, fixed times, run the business after they went to bed. It was very, very difficult. I think to date, if I look at kids, I don't particularly feel moody in that sense, because it wasn't pleasant. But the good thing, although it was very difficult, the good thing is I maintained my identity. And today, when my kids are grown up, they're looking at me, with aspirations, thinking, wow, mommy's done something. And of course, it's not possible for everyone. And it was easier for me because I ran my own business. And it's more difficult, I think, if you go out there and you're working for somebody else. Although I hope that somehow will change a little bit now with people being more flexible with online working, because it allows mothers to be able to do that and form that sort of thing. And going into the political, I got into politics a couple of years ago. And again, the juggling act just, just when the kids got older and you had that little bit of spare time, it was just gazumped by the politics. So it was very difficult. But what I would say, my biggest advice to everybody in this stage of their life is, get help. Get help from whoever you can get help from. In my case, it was just getting lots of staff around myself. But a lot of you hopefully are not in my situation. So you probably have mums around, mother-in-laws, sisters, brothers, you name it. You get the help that you need to get help. And, I've got to say this to you, there is no, stop being a martyr. There is no medal at the end of this journey for having done it on your own. So, give up trying to do it all. Sometimes we do it because we just want to prove it to ourselves. I can do it all. Nobody's going to acknowledge that at the end, apart from you. So go out there and get as much help as you can without shame, because you need it. And especially if you're going into politics, you're going to need some sort of support around you. It might just be only your husband. We all know how to, one thing we're all good and great at as ladies is improvising and juggling. We know how to do that best of all. So you will find a way in your own lives to do that, if you look at it carefully and just take the chance to get the help.
And on the question of support, Naz, what do you think is available at the moment, and what additional support do you think is needed for women trying to get into politics?
Okay, so the one thing I would say is things that are available, for example, is for example, the 50-50 Parliament organization and the talk we're in today. I mean, that has been superb. That's how I got into politics. I'm a great advocate for them. For years, I did my degree in criminology, so I always had a bit of an interest in politics. And people would tease me when I watched Question Time over and over and over again and screamed at the TV, you should get into politics, but I never knew what to do. How do you get into politics? If you don't have friends or family involved, it's almost like this elite club that you don't know what to do with. So for me, 50-50 Parliament was great. There was this advert, I always say to Francis, that popped up on my Facebook. Do you want to be an MP? I was like, yes, I've been wanting it, yes. So it was great. And what they do, number one, they will, they'll call you and they will just help you with the entire process and take you through it, which is great. Just the normal introduction, which for people like me really mattered because I didn't know anybody. Secondly, they'll find you a mentor. And that's so important because we all need mentors in our life. I'm a great believer in mentors in all walks of life. And then they give you, the third thing they do is they put you in touch with this wonderful network of ladies, all of which are doing something similar to you. And when you're able to share that experience, we all hear of the boys club, and if you're in London, of the boys, there's lots of men's clubs out there. And this almost forms like our little women's group where we can share our experiences that are unique to us. So, organizations like 50-50 are great. Like I said, go out there, get help from everywhere. I think in terms of the government, we should be looking at more childcare help. And I don't just mean outside childcare. What helped me, and I think a lot of people resonate with this, was the guilt of it all. So even when I was working, running my business, building a future for my kids, because they're the ones benefiting, hopefully in the future with this type of schools they go to, etc. There was a guilt. I constantly beat myself up about how, I had to leave them, or they were crying and I had to leave them longer, or, there was a constant guilt. And what worked for me best was having help at home. So having an au pair or a home help, because that way this might not work for everybody that's working, with companies, etc. But if you're running your own business, the home care just was great. So I think if the government's able to open up the opportunities of au pairs and things, people are just able to then have a wider range of childcare available to them, because dropping your child to nursery when they're very young is not everybody's cup of tea. Some of us can live with that, some of us don't. Of course, we shouldn't be guilting ourselves about it, but we do. So that would really, help, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've spoken quite a bit.
Thanks, Naz. That really rings true. And I was just thinking about the campaign we've been doing at Pregnant and Screwed on the cost of childcare, because the cost of childcare in this country are extortionately high. We all know, having, we've got kids, or we know people that have got kids. It's just insane. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who's working 4 days a week at the moment. She's got 3 kids. She's taking home £50 a week. And she's like, what is the point of all of this? Why am I doing this? I'm dropping my kids off. I'm not seeing them. It's complete chaos. I get trouble from my boss if I can't because one of the kids is sick, and all of this for 50 quid a week. But she wants to stay in the job market because she doesn't want to be in the situation, when the speakers were saying earlier, of not being able to have a career and move forward. You know, you don't want to take 10 years out of your career. So I do think that the cost of childcare campaign, and as you said, different types of childcare, is just incredibly important to getting women to be able to be in the workforce. This isn't about women not wanting to be in the workforce. This is about us not being able to be, because it's just extortionate. It's completely bonkersly extortionate. And then the other thing you were saying was about mentoring. And I got a mentor. I was on a mentoring scheme, which was really, 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 really powerful as well. And somebody the other day described mentoring to me as opening doors that you didn't even know existed. And it just really rang true for me as somebody who didn't grow up in politics and grew up completely outside that world. There was just a whole world out there that I had no clue. I didn't even know what a counsellor was 5 years ago. No clue. And I think that mentoring scheme and having women, a tribe of women who are part of it, you can go to and say, I don't know how this works. Like, I don't know what the party is. I don't know all the motions and all of that stuff. Like, can you just talk to me, and have someone you can trust who can talk to you, is incredibly powerful, and certainly made a massive difference for me. And it sounds like it did for you as well, which is great to hear. Okay, so we're going to go back to Nanda now, who we heard from a little bit earlier, who's our next panelist. Oh, I'm going to find my notes. Nanda is a Labour and Co-op councillor in Lambeth, as you heard earlier, and is the Deputy Cabinet Minister for Finance and the Cost of Living. So Nanda, tell us a bit about how you became councillor.
Thanks, Kizzy. You know, I'm just in complete agreement with all of the points that have already been mentioned. I think for me, so I can relate to some of the points that that Naz just mentioned, where I was at home on maternity leave, watching Question Time, as you do with your Thursday evening, very rock and roll. And I just remember just being increasingly frustrated with the narrative, you know, discussions. I didn't see, and I looked around me and I didn't really see enough people who looked like me representing me. And so there was you know, stark lack of enough representation. And so I thought, well, there's no point shouting at your TV screen because nobody can hear you. You need to get more actively involved at grassroots level. And I've always been a member, because you know, when I was at college, I studied government and politics, but it kind of just went over my head. But I did understand the importance of joining a political party, even though I wasn't as actively involved. And I thought came to my mind, and I dug out an old email from my junk folder, and I thought, okay, let me go along to my next meeting. Reached out to my constituency secretary, and it just so happened that the meeting was an AGM, and I went along to my first AGM meeting. And I so living in a borough, a really diverse borough like Lambeth, I was quite surprised to attend the first AGM meeting, and only to find that I was one of two Black women in a room of over 150 sort of white comrades. And I thought, well, where is everybody else? Because, you know, this isn't representative of our wider community. And you know, unbeknownst, you know, I didn't really know what was happening at the time, you know. So sometimes I do feel like we do need a bit of a jargon buster, because we do kind of speak in acronyms, and people do feel excluded, especially if it's your first time in a political meeting. But I thought, okay, I'm not really sure what's going on, but I know that I would like to get involved, and I would like to put myself out there. And so I did. I first meeting, put myself forward for one of the local positions at the branch level. And unbeknown to me, there were 5 others like myself in similar meetings doing exactly the same. And that started a bit of a movement. So that brought us all together, and we kind of learned very quickly about the role. It was a learning curve for all of us, but we grew and we developed together. And then the opportunity came along for me to represent the constituency in the same role as a constituency BAME officer. And then when I got, so I went for that position again, the more I got involved at various levels within the party, the more it broadened my horizons, the more it created an appetite within me, the more it gave me exposure, the more I learnt. And as I said, it was a journey collectively. And along that path, you know, we've some, you know, we've talked about sort of mentors and you know, and support, and definitely that helped me along the way, because I had a lot of unofficial mentors as such, that guided me along my journey, and from one opportunity to the next, you know, I would then seize networking opportunities as much as possible to meet other women like myself, attending party conferences, attending sort of BAME network conferences, etc., and just connecting the dots, linking in with others who were like me, but in, you know, across the borders, in different parts of different constituencies, learning from each other, sharing, and we started to form an informal sort of network, and that network continued to grow, and we still communicate with each other till today, and I would say that definitely building that support network it's invaluable to have that support network around you. And also, by me getting involved actively in politics, by default, my family did as well. And so also getting them, so having that support at home as well helped us. And we would just, like I said, bounce ideas off each other, brainstorm together and troubleshoot, because there are, you know, a lot of the barriers and the challenges that we face, irrespective of which political party you're part of. Unfortunately, it's not in isolation. A lot of those experiences, we all go through them. So being able to kind of just share and support each other along that way. And then the opportunity came for me to stand to be a counsellor, and I thought, absolutely, why not? You know, I want to be able to bring my lived experience to the table. I want to be able to contribute to the key decisions that are being made around me, and so it was on my. I tried 3 times to become a counsellor, so it was on my 3rd attempt that I became a counsellor, and I remember that. You know, there were a lot of sort of barriers and hurdles that I had to overcome, and imposter syndrome definitely was one of the big ones, because despite, you know, knowing that yes, I have a lot to contribute, I have a lot to bring to the table, there you look around the room and you think, is this space really for me? And so again, my support network and just having those key people around me, encouraging me, being that voice in your ear to say keep going, really did make a world of difference. And so yes, when I stood to be a counsellor, I think there was at the time a lot of challenges against the backdrop. There was a lot happening with Brexit and lots of other external factors which also impacted the local by-election that I stood in. But despite that, against the odds, with the support of people around me, I was able to win my by-election seat with a majority of 19, and that at the time was one of the smallest majorities on my council, but that also helped to motivate others around me. And then there was a bit of a ripple effect with other friends as well, who also thought, actually, yeah, I'm going to throw my hat into the ring, I'm going to throw caution to the wind, and I'm going to take that leap of faith. Fast forward 3 years on, it's been a journey. Definitely learning curve is when I first threw my hat into to be a BAME officer, but I've really grown and developed along the way and learned from many others around me, you know, what I would say is definitely asking questions is really, really important. When you ask a question, you have everything to gain and absolutely nothing to lose, as far as I'm concerned, and speak even though your voice is shaking. And I remember that first meeting where I looked around the room, no one else really knew me, and I thought, I'm just going to put my hand up, and there was a young lady that was next to me. She's like, yeah, go for it, I'll support you. We'd only been speaking for about 5 minutes, but you know, just that sisterly support really has helped to put the wind in my sails and guide me along the way. As I said previously, bringing your lived experience to the table is really, really important. But it is a challenge. It's a balancing act, I would say, because at the time I got involved, my daughter was still quite young. She hadn't even started reception at that time. And so juggling childcare, I mean, that point that you made, Kizzy, honestly, it was eye-watering when I had to pay for my daughter to go to nursery. And at the end of every month, I probably only had about £50 to kind of stretch across, thank goodness for family support. And so it's a balancing act, and, you know, cost of childcare, time management. Many times my friends often say to me, you know, when do you sleep? And I said, well, I'm a vampire. But honestly, you have to kind of balance, okay, when she goes to bed, when I have a bit of quiet time, there's a lot of juggling. Sometimes I'm on the train and I'm replying to emails, so you do spin a lot of plates, but we as women are very good at multitasking, I would say. But take some time out also for self-care, looking after yourself, because we do a lot for everybody else, but we have to make sure that we look after ourselves, so that we're not running in deficit, so that we're actually able to wake up in the morning and, you know, give those morning hugs and be able to be our best possible selves for our children, for our family, for our friends, and also when we go to work, you know, being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So my motto is always work smart, play harder. I try to. So that bit about keeping your identity is really, really important as well. So I still try and, you know, go on spa breaks with some of my girlfriends, and just taking that time to just juggle and balance as much as we can. But yeah, mentoring and support is definitely really important. So that's my journey in a nutshell, plus also a couple of kind of nuggets that I thought I'd share with all of you. But I'll hand it over to you.
That was really, really helpful. Thank you. Really inspiring. I think just quickly, so I've got an 8-month-old, and I was elected in May. So I was heavily pregnant when I had my selection interview, and then I gave birth and I didn't have to, but I chose to campaign and all of that with a tiny baby strapped to me. And I think I would say, actually, for me in my council, it's been much more supportive than I expected it to be. It's been much more flexible than I expected to be. I think often we talk about the hard stuff, and there is loads of hard stuff, but also, you know, I can take my baby with me. Residents love babies. They love the baby way more than they love me. I take her to everything. She comes to my surgery, she comes to the meetings, she comes to the school visits, and everyone's absolutely delighted to see her. And believe me, they're not normally delighted to see politicians. It's not a normal occurrence. And so the flexibility it has afforded, I think, is amazing, and something that we kind of sometimes play down. On the flip side of that, I had a cabinet meeting today, which I brought my baby to, and she hadn't had a sleep and decided to do a poo 6 minutes in, and I had to leave. And I spent the rest of the afternoon just feeling completely dreadful and like I was kind of failure at life. So, you know, there are ups and downs to all of this, but there are some absolute positives where you can do a role that is, you know, again, everything's close to my house. Everything's within a 20-minute walk. I live in the ward that I represent, and so I can go to all of the events and push the buggy with me and do all of that. I couldn't have done that in my old job because I was covering the whole of the southeast and I had to be all over the place all the times. So for all the women watching, you know, there are upsides to this as well as the downsides. There are real positives and benefits to doing this and having parenting and having that flexibility that can be really good, but it's not always that way. Nanda, if you had to kind of a similar question to what I asked Alison earlier, if you was to saying what the kind of top 3 steps that you think people should take, women watching this saying, you know, I really want to go for it, what top 3 things would you say to them they should do? Oh, you're muted. Had to happen eventually, didn't it? Can you unmute?
I think we can hear you, Alison.
Oh, Nanda.
Oh, it's Nanda. Sorry, Nanda. There she is.
There we go.
Great. So I think for me, definitely I've witnessed some of my colleagues, you know, breastfeeding midway through council meetings, and I think it's fantastic. And long may all of that support continue, definitely. So we do have a lot of colleagues, a lot of allies, you know, male colleagues as well, who do understand, and they do help to kind of advocate. I think for me, as I said, I think it's really important to sort of try and have a support network around you, even if it's people that may not necessarily be as politically inclined, you know, just people that you can be able to talk to if you've had a bit of a challenging day, be able to kind of sense check things with, who aren't completely immersed in this sort of political bubble. But even if they are, it also helps because it means that they understand some of the challenges that we face. I think also being able to kind of create boundaries and where possible, you know, so being able to say, okay, like for myself, I try definitely on a Friday evening and most Sundays, you know, that's family time. So, you know, I'm a Christian, so we go to church on a Sunday and spend that quality time. Friday evening, I'll turn off the iPad, turn off the computer, put it on airplane mode, and we're watching maybe Disney movies or we're doing something, and just having that, you know, time away from day-to-day work. I think also not being afraid to say no, and that's all part of creating boundaries as well, because you will, because we're so good at sort of multitasking and taking on so much, sometimes more than we should, you know, sometimes we feel, oh no, I don't want to let so and so down, I don't want to let this person down, etc. And so we're a bit reluctant to say no, but it's okay to say no. It's okay to kind of push back. It's okay to delegate. It's okay to say, oh, thank you so much for inviting me, but on this occasion, you know, on this occasion I'm unable to make it. And you know, but do let me know how things how it goes. Keep me informed, and hopefully next time I can join you. That's okay. People will understand. And I think just making your peace with some of those sometimes difficult but decisions, and sometimes it's difficult in the beginning, but the more you do it, practice makes improvement. The more well versed you become at saying yes, no, maybe, and being able to kind of cherry pick or tailor your day, your week, your schedule according to the things that, you know, interest you. And as I said before, self-care is really important. So if you don't look after yourself, you'll turn up to that meeting and you're not really engaged, not really switched on. So finding that time to kind of just spend for yourself, whether it's a bubble bath or listening to your favorite album, whatever it is, or an audio book, but just taking that time for yourself to recharge, to rest, to recuperate, so that when you do go back out there again, you really are staying in your lane. So yeah, those are some of the bits that I would share.
Thanks, Amanda. That was great. I feel inspired. I felt rested just listening to you talking about bubble baths and albums. I was like, that's a great idea. And it's interesting what you say about staying connected with the outside world. I've had a few colleagues, and I've noticed the gender split in this. I don't know if anyone else has noticed it, but a lot of my male council colleagues seem to be very much in the politics world. And I'll say things like, well, make sure you stay connected with friends who are not in politics. And I go, well, all of my friends aren't in politics. Like, my friends aren't in politics. I've just got friends. They're just people that I grew up with. Like, they work in normal jobs doing normal things. Like, what are you talking about? And then I realized that their friends really are, like, they go on holiday and they're like, I'm going on holiday with this person, and like their whole world is political. And I've really noticed that. So I mean, my advice would be, do keep your friends in politics, but if the rest of you are anything like me, that's not going to be a problem, because they're just people. We're just normal people. Okay, so I'm going to open up to the panel some of the questions that you've asked and some of the questions that we kind of thought of. So I'll start with Naz. I'm going to come back to you. What do you think are some of the kind of pros and cons of stepping into politics as a woman, as a parent?
So pros, I mean, I absolutely love it. Like some of the other panelists have said, you know, you have a voice, you're making a difference. You're able to represent your group of your background, whichever background you come from. And that's really important, of course, in politics. You know, it's just being able to go out there, have a voice. And like I said in my previous talk, it's about keeping your identity. So politics is a great way. It allows you, the timings are fantastic. Having talked to some of the MPs that mentor me, it fits in perfectly. It fits into the school timetables, it fits into the holidays. So there's a lot of pluses in being able to, you know, to go out there. I just absolutely love it. Having got where I need to be financially with business and academically, having studied and done what I want to do, for me, this is just a great way to contribute back to society, to life, make a real difference in the world, in the country. Like I said, I came in as an immigrant, so for me, to make a difference in the country that gave me such a vast amount of opportunity, it's just fantastic. So, you know, I'm sure you all have your own stories of why you want to get involved, but it's truly inspiring. Whoever I talk to, and I'm very much like Kizzy, I have no friends in politics, zero. And, you know, when they hear about it, they're like, really, how? So it's great. And, you know, for anybody on the Conservative Party list here, you know, getting onto the candidate list is just the first step. I mean, it's taken a long time to get here, a couple of years, I think, but it's just the first step. So for me, I'm still in the very early days, but when all my friends here are on the list, they think I've done it, I've made it. So, you know, we underestimate ourselves in what we're able to achieve. But when people look at us, and especially your kids, you know, I can see the amazement. I remember the picture with Boris Johnson. I only saw him at the Conservative Party conference, so it wasn't like I sat down with him or anything, but I managed to snap a picture. And my kids had that picture circulating left, right, and center, you know, with all the, so it's great to be able to see your kids proud of you, right? You know, we're often proud of our kids, but we don't often see it the other way around. So I'm all for maintaining your identity, you know, despite having kids, finding the balance, of course, because you don't want to give it all up. The negative, well, you know, it takes a long time, and it's not an easy process. It's taken me a lot of time, energy. I think it's been great that it went online with COVID, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have got to where I am today. A lot of it was online, so I used my time in lockdown, and you know, we're all reassessing where we want to be. So it was the perfect opportunity. But some of it has not been easy at all. Going for my interview to be a candidate, for example, I had to travel to Leeds, I had to stay the night there, I had to find childcare, I had to pay for the hotel. So some of the processes are quite difficult. They can be expensive if you're going out canvassing all over the country, as some of the parties expect you to. So it's not easy by any means. I mean, there is help available, there are grants available. I think these are a lot of bottlenecks that a lot of the parties need to think about, especially for women, because for men, it's almost easier if you can park your kids with your wife or mom, and then off you go, because you know you've got your car, and you know you can just. But for a lot of us, you know, moms, it's not easy just to leave our kids and just go away and stay a night away. You know, it's not easy. So it is a journey, and I think we're up against a lot of it, but that's what 50/50 is all about, right? We're trying to make the representation better. So if we make the representation better, then hopefully some of these things will iron out, because right now it's led in a very different way, suited to the group of people that are there. So if we change the representation, then hopefully our voices will be heard more, because it really shouldn't be this difficult. If, as a successful career woman with 2 kids that are teenagers, and financially, I can't say I've been very lucky. If I'm finding it difficult, then I can just imagine the group of women put off by this entire process. And, you know, we've got some great talent out there, but they get discouraged because they find the political ladder quite difficult to climb. So these are things we have to address. But until we're there, we're not going to address it. So we all need to get
it. Amen to that. Alison, same question to you. What do you think some of the pros and cons are? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, that's okay. I think you can hear me now, can't you? So I want to mention the kind of, for me, what the key purpose of being a counsellor is, as a way of answering your question, which is actually looking after and advocating for your residents. And one of the pros of doing that as a parent, I think, is that it helps you teach your child about the community. It helps your, depending obviously on what age your child is. My daughter's now 17, but she was 10 when I first started doing all this. And I think that's a really good thing, because I think we live a lot in our bubbles. So it might sound like a strange kind of pro, but I think it's a really important one, because I don't actually like the phrase career in politics. I don't really see it as a career as such, but I see it as a kind of, as a way of understanding and supporting your community. So the pro is, as a parent, that you expose your child to the real community and the real problems that people face. And I think that's a really, really good thing. The cons are that if you've got a young child, they probably do think you're absolutely marvelous. But the minute they get to teenage, I mean, she is so embarrassed by me, and I'm in the paper a lot. You know, it's like she can roll her eyes so far back, it cannot be safe medically. And that's all quite funny, but there's also a downside to it too, which is that she has come in for a bit of bullying at school, because I'm quite well known locally. So, you know, so there is a potential sort of toll on the children. But I think it's a really important thing to sort of demonstrate that we're all on this earth just the once. What are we going to give back? And I'm just really cross that you can't do that unless you've got the money to do it. And going back to what we were saying earlier on, you know, it's not a career in politics is only a career if you end up being an MP, because councillors do not get paid a living wage. And that's why in Devon, 70% of the councillors, I think, are retired men who basically they get their stipend and it pays off their golf club membership. You know, it's certainly not something you could give up a job to do unless you're going for the Westminster seats. So
I'm going to take that moment to do a little plug for the This Mum Votes campaign that Pregnant and Screwed have been running. I'll see if I can multitask and put a link in the chat. If I can't, maybe someone else can.
I'm on it,
But if you are, thank you, Alice. Yeah, if you're interested in getting involved and seeing all the barriers, then please do join the This Mum Votes campaign. It's about getting more mums into the cross-party campaign. Rhiannon, what about you? What do you think from what you've seen in the research?
I mean, I think from what everyone said, there's such a lot that needs to change to make things easier. And I think it's the sort of key thing coming out of it all is that there needs to be this real acceptance by people in power that, we've always done it like this isn't a good enough reason to keep doing things in the same way, right? So, for hundreds of years, the system, whether it's councils or whether it's parliament, it's been set up to work for a certain group of people. And, no one really thought about how mums might get involved or even women might get involved because it just wasn't seen as a place for them. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that actually there do need to be some big changes, and we should be thinking big about how to get more mums involved and how to get more women involved. And it will be difficult, and it's a challenging thing to do, but it's 100% necessary, and it will also be worth it because politics needs to be more representative.
Yeah, 100%. So I covered as a locum MP for Stella Creasy in her first maternity leave, and I mean, that was obviously in itself quite a unique thing. Wandering around Parliament just really makes you realise why no one's thinking about these things, because the people on the walls are really old white blokes. Yeah. Like you're just surrounded by old white blokes everywhere you look. And of course, they've never thought about this stuff. Of course, they haven't. Why would they? It's not been in their, in their remit, in their thoughts. So I did, yeah, absolutely what you're saying about needing to represent so that those issues are on the table, so that they need to be thought about is just so important. So important. Nanda, how about you? What do you think? What needs to be changed to make things easier?
Yeah, no, so echoing similar sentiments, really, you really do need that diversity of thought, participation and representation. And I think it's really, obviously, the Westminster, local councils, of course, they are working environments, but I think it's really important for provision to be made for parents to be able to kind of participate. That doesn't necessarily mean that, and yes, it's not always that we will be able to kind of bring our little ones with us into work, but at least there is a big issue still around sort of parental leave, and if we just look at some of our sort of some of the Nordic countries around us that have alternatives on the ballot paper, for example, along with the candidate, so that if that person's sick or absent for whatever reason, they have that flexibility. I think it's just really important that we have something similar created here in the UK. And I know that there's a lot of talk at the moment. There has been a lot of conversations, and I think Stella's been phenomenal in kind of leading from the front by example on this. But we need more colleagues, more, and as I was saying earlier about allyship, we need more of our male colleagues as well, to also help champion this and help to drive this forward. So I do think some kind of more support for parental leave, and just create those alternatives so that it is a bit more inclusive and doesn't, because the current system currently does put a lot of people off, and we want to be able to make sure that Parliament is as fully accessible to parents as possible, not just Parliament but local government as well. So baby leave or parental leave, I think, is something that needs to be kind of set in stone. At the moment it's almost like a it's a nice to have, but it's not. And in any other kind of career or any other kind of profession you are still afforded a certain amount of parental leave, except for politics. So that's definitely something that I think we need to move. We need to see it moving along or progressing a bit quicker than it has been.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nanda. Actually, just yesterday it was announced in Irish Parliament. I've got the tweet here, a friend sent it to me, that a female councillor can now choose their own substitute who will get paid the equivalent rate of the annual representation that councillors get. If they don't want to choose a substitute, they'll get a stipend to get an admin assistant to help out. And it feels like a really basic, obvious thing that's now gone through in Irish, but like we're all going, yeah, that would be really great. that be helpful to be able to do that? And it's just something it feels like we're still so far away from, but we shouldn't be. You know, it's 2022. There is no good reason why we don't have this kind of thing in place. Lots of other places are doing it. So it was really encouraging to see that Ireland are making that step forward, because, you know, it feels like maybe we'll get there if we keep going. All right, some questions from the floor. So the first one we've got is there anywhere we can go to understand the structure of government at all levels and what opportunities there are at different levels? Who wants to have a go at answering that? Naz, got your hand up, go for it.
Okay, so I can speak from personal experience, because like I said, I just didn't know where to start, had no idea, but wanted to get involved for years. And it was exactly, like I said, 50-50 that helped. So they have what they call a bite-sized event every week. And it's brilliant because they cover different topics every single week, and you do it online. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's definitely once, if not twice a week. And it's brilliant because it, you know, it takes you through the very basics. So local councillor level, MP level, what to expect when you're being chosen as a candidate. And what they do is they do different sessions based on the party you're in. So there'll be a separate one for a Labour Party every week and a separate one for Conservative Party every week. It's actually fantastic, really, to have that, because without that, I honestly, till today, would have loved to do it without knowing where to begin. So I really think organizations, there are other organizations as well that help females. There's Conservative Women Organization. I'm sure I'm sure the Labour Party, they'll probably tell you about their own organization. So there's lots of such organizations that sort of home in and help you. So look out for them, find them, and get involved, because a lot of the online stuff now will guide you through the whole thing.
Yeah, really good advice. Get involved in 50-50 stuff, find your party, and then once you go to one of those, you'll find the different ways people will help you and hold your hand. So I think we have a question from Erin, is that right? We're gonna unmute Erin. There we go. Yeah. Erin, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when I was younger, I was putting a lot of like informal crushes that ran, so like CLP meetings, other gatherings, things like that. And I remember it kind of being a mismatch of different parents, or for bigger events, it was set up a little bit more formally. But that doesn't happen now. There's a lot of red tape, like DBS checks, other things like that, the cost of it. And that actually culturally, it just doesn't exist anymore. So I was just wondering, how could we get back to that? How could we get back to those days? Yeah, hope that makes sense.
So I missed. Tell me again. So how would we get back to the days of
being able to have sort of informal childcare or crushes available at events? Like
yeah, that's a good question. Anyone got any thoughts on that?
It's sad, isn't it, that we're all silent on that? But
no.
Yeah, I mean, it's and it goes to a problem, which is that some of the councils, the male-dominated run councils, think that because they say in the small print, we will reimburse childcare, that kind of ticks off the problem. But it doesn't, because you don't know to the last minute that you're going to need some cover. So, you know, I think like Erin's saying, you know, having a culture of there being somebody available on site during a meeting, you'd have to get your council to pass a motion to agree to have somebody run a creche. But you know how I think that's a really good idea, and I think we should look at that. And you know what? I don't care if there's only one baby that will be able to go, because you've got to start having the provision, and then the need will follow. So you know, it shouldn't be it shouldn't make money having a creche. It should be providing a service, and then you could launch your thing as a council and say, "Look at us, we're changing things. Stand for election."
Yeah, I totally agree.
For that question. I think
you launch the provision and then people will follow. And I also think there's something really powerful about just saying we are friendly to families, bring your children, just having that said, because I think if it's not said, you just presume it's not, and you feel awful and awkward and horrible. Like somebody needs to stand up and say, it's all right, bring your kids, we'll figure it out. And once that's been said, it feels possible.
Someone was saying in the chat that if you've got a baby in the meeting, it tends to make the behaviour better, which I think
100%.
And in one of our local council meetings, we actually had a fight break out. So I think it would be a very good idea nip that behaviour in the bud. So yes, I think all of the counsellors on this call should put motions forward to actually have a budget for a creche, even if nobody uses it, just to get the principle in place.
Thanks, Alison.
I'm up.
Erin, I'm going to come back to you quickly, and then I think we've got one more question time, and then we'll probably have to wrap up. Go on, Erin.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, if anyone does write that motion, it would be really good to share it.
Yeah.
And then also just to point out, I was put in creches when I was younger, and I'm still friends with a lot of those kids I was put in creches with, because that was the culture of it, and that was the nice thing.
So true. Yeah, it's so true. It's a way to build your networks. So I think we have a question from Donna, who I think is going to be our last question, unfortunately, because we are having a great chat, but we're also running out of time. So Donna, are you there?
Yes. Hi. Yeah, hi. So I just wanted to find out if it's a barrier living in an area and seeking election, if within the area it's a predominantly older generation who have much different priorities.
As in, if the electorate are?
Yes, so you want to put yourself forward, you want to gain election, but the majority of the people in the area that you live are of a completely different generation and totally different priorities.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a barrier?
Yeah, it makes sense. Anyone got any experience of that on the panel? Nanda, I'm going to go to you. She's on mute, but we're going to unmute her as if by magic. There you go.
By magic. Thanks, Donna, for your question. I don't believe it should be a barrier, because I wouldn't say I have actually. The first area that I did represent, there was a mixture of demographics in the area. So certain parts of the wards did have a maturer residents in comparison to other parts of the ward. But I think it's really important to just demonstrate how you are going to kind of be that visible, vocal sort of local voice representing all of their views, irrespective of your age. I know there's that saying, with age comes maturity, but equally as well, I think I got along really well with the mature residents in my wards. I would go along to their 50 plus afternoon tea sessions. I'd pop around, for a cup of tea, help them out with, sometimes it's just being able to just work things on their phone or their iPad. So there are a lot of uses, a lot of benefits, a lot of added value, being from a different generation, because it's also different perspectives as well. So I wouldn't let that sort of put you off or be a deterrent. If anything, it will just, like I said, it will enhance and enrich the local area, because it's like, yes, we've got a younger representative, and you'll be able to kind of look at things through your perspective, through your lens, from a generational point of view, and it will just help to just improve things. And also, you'll be able to go the whole 9 yards, especially on the doorstep and things like that. And also you'll I'm sure suggest creative and innovative ways of doing things, and challenging that status quo of things have always been done this way. So it can only be a benefit, a plus, is what I would say.
Yeah, agreed fully. That was a nice positive way to wrap up. So look, I just want to say a massive thank you firstly to our lovely panelists for joining us and sharing their wise words of wisdom and their inspiring words with us. So thank you everybody for joining us, and to all of you mums and non-mums, women on the call who have joined in and dialed in, those of you who are breastfeeding, looking after small children, or could have been doing something else on this sunny summer evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for thinking about getting involved in politics. For me, the two takeaways are, and they would be, wouldn't they? One, join up to 50-50 Parliament, go and see some of the events, find out who your tribe are, find some women to get involved in. And two, join up to the Pregnant and Screwed campaign, specifically on childcare. Some of the others, have a look at some of the Mumsnet research. There's lots of stuff out there. Lots of women are now talking about this, which is really important. So keep the conversation going, stay in touch with other people, find your tribe. They are out there, they want to talk to you about this, and we all want to make it better. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
I also just want to shout out to Kizzy. Thank you so much for jumping in last minute and sharing this. You've been amazing. And I also just want to say from Frances, our 50-50 founder, she's on LBC tonight with Nick Abbott, talking about babies in the Commons at 10 p.m. So do tune in to keep this conversation going. There'll be a blog sent out written about this event, and the recording for you all will be in your inboxes soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Alice. Bye.